Hey guys, my name is Smio, and today I had completely forgotten how incredible Titanfall 2 was. Now you might be thinking to yourself, what year is it? Didn't this game come out in like 2016? And you're right, only until recently has EA released a bunch of their games onto Steam, one of them being Titanfall 2, which has caused their player base to skyrocket. For some reason, I just decided on a whim to try it once again, and I was blown away by how amazing this game is. Honestly, the more that I played, the more that I thought to myself, how did this franchise Titanfall just kind of slowly fizzle away and become Apex Legends? Now, I don't have anything against Apex. I think it's fantastic in its own right, but I just feel like Titanfall is on a completely different level. One of the things that you immediately notice is the movement. Being able to bounce around from building to building is one of the most satisfying things in this game, hands down. Now, I am by no means a master when it comes to the movement, and that quickly became apparent as soon as I went against some players that had been here since the very beginning. Seeing and witnessing them use grappling hooks, their abilities, and just the movement system itself to fluidly move and traverse around the map, and all the while taking players out the entire time, it was something to behold. But for even someone like me, who clearly doesn't really know what's going on half the time, when I was finally able, and you guys will hopefully see it throughout today's video, being able to bounce from wall to wall, double jumping, then hip firing multiple players back to back, it is incredibly satisfying. I think it's worth commending when a game is able to make just moving around the map enjoyable. Most other multiplayer video games out there, the movement system, while important, really isn't the thing that stands out. It's more of just, oh, I have to run to this objective, to that objective to find the next engagement. It's just kind of the vehicle at which you actually get to the real meats and potatoes of what those FPS games have to offer. But that's not necessarily true for Titanfall. It really is one of the core components, the mechanics that makes it so much fun, and I think they've done a phenomenal job here. Another thing that stuck out to me was the variety of the gameplay. Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like I know the nuances of the meta and I know which weapons were balanced and which ones are terrible, but by and large, depending on the situation, as long as I used a weapon properly, pretty much everything was viable with a couple of exceptions. At one moment, I was whipping around with a really great SMG, being able to hip fire people down up close, and then if I wanted to make things a little bit more interesting, I could use something like the Mozambique, which was actually more of a projectile weapon, which allowed you to do heavy damage, but required a little bit more skill and finesse. And then finally, if all of that wasn't enough, we also have the Titans themselves, which all have unique abilities and playstyles that you're gonna have to master. For example, you can play as the Scorch, which was one of my favorites, which is essentially a giant tank that also has a lot of great aerial of denial abilities, making it very difficult for the enemy Titans to push on in. You can then have someone play as the North Star, which is essentially a sniper chassis, and they can do extreme damage at a distance. You stop them from pushing on in, you have your buddy doing extreme damage, like it's a great combo. But if the enemy is being smart about it and they countered it with a Ronin chassis, they can then push on in, get really up close and personal to the North Star, and take it out with melee abilities. The nuance and the different dynamics between all the Titans is really cool. Like they've really thought it through. Now, once again, I don't want to speak on the meta. I have no idea if things are balanced in the grand scheme of things. I probably have to put hundreds of hours into this game, but at least at first glance, it was an incredible amount of fun just bouncing and trying to use all these different Titans. And so with all that being said, and getting back to my original question, how in the world did this franchise not take off? Am I the odd one out here? Does this not have a large appeal to a lot of players? Which is a distinct possibility, but I have a hard time believing that. If you're someone who enjoys more of the pilot gameplay, there were modes that were designed specifically around that. If you didn't want to play in a Titan whatsoever, you didn't have to. If you just liked that speed and momentum, that was available. If you just wanted to play as a Titan, because if we're being honest with ourselves, the Titan gameplay could be its own separate game entirely from what the pilots are after, that was also an option, and then you had everything in between. And so just looking from the outside in, it just seems like this game has everything a wide variety of players would want, but it just didn't take off. I think the biggest culprit, because I looked back to refresh my memory a little bit, is that for some reason, EA or whoever was responsible for the release date decided to launch Titanfall 2 in between the juggernauts that was Battlefield Battlefield 1 and the Call of Duty franchise. It's to my understanding, based off a couple articles that I read, that EA was trying to chip away at the Call of Duty player base. By releasing both Battlefield and Titanfall around the same time, their hopes were they were thinking that those games were going to be popular enough that less people would then be inclined to pick up the new Call of Duty, but obviously that didn't happen. COD is popular for a reason. It has name power, it has recognition. People are going to play COD regardless, no matter what other game tries to kind of step into their territory. And that's what happened, I think, with Titanfall 2. You released these two giant video games at the same time. Battlefield had a ton of hype going into it. People were going to buy that regardless. People are going to buy COD as well. And so Titanfall was just kind of left out to dry. It backfired significantly to the point where I read that the original Titanfall, which was only, I believe, on PC and Xbox, actually sold way more within the first week, like 50% more compared to Titanfall 2, which was on all platforms. Like, it backfired hard. Another thing that could have contributed to this is just poor marketing. The original Titanfall, Microsoft really hammered home that it was an Xbox One exclusive. Buy an Xbox so you can play this incredible new franchise, but also on PC. But they were really hammering home that point, and there was a ton of marketing around it. When Titanfall 2 came around, though, apparently there wasn't as big of a push. There were even a large majority of people that didn't even realize that Titanfall 2 was available on the PlayStation 4. It seemed like EA had dropped the ball in the marketing department because they just did not let players know that the sequel was also going to be available on a larger variety of platforms. The final thing that I could think of is that even though just a couple of minutes ago I was praising the game for its complexity, its very high skill ceiling, there's a lot of dynamics happening in Titanfall 2 that also could be its partial downfall. The people that stuck around really loved this game, and they played it day in and day out, and they got really good at it. And so if you were someone who was brand new playing for the very first time, going against these players, you're just gonna get dominated. And if that happens over and over, you're just gonna get frustrated and leave and play something else. This was something that I experienced in my short time playing in these last couple of days. Now, for me, it wasn't all that bad because it was intermixed with people that were also around my same skill level. But if that happened every single match, I could see myself giving up pretty quickly. And so I think one of the reasons why this game slowly dwindled to the very small player base that it had is that the people that were sticking around were incredible because of the very high skill ceiling, but there wasn't that casual player base to sustain it to keep more of that casual player base, if that kind of makes any sense. If you want to have a matchmaking system that works properly, you're going to have to pull from a very large pool of players, which it just didn't have. And so if this game had hundreds of thousands of people playing concurrently, those casual people would then be paired with more casual people. They would slowly learn the game at their own pace. They would get better and better and then rise through the ranks. But the entire time they're learning with other players. But that just didn't happen in Titanfall 2 because they never got to that point. And so I feel like this was one of the contributing factors for why the game just didn't take off. Having a high skill ceiling is awesome, and I think it's one of the reasons why I play games like Rainbow Six Siege. Clearly it can be done successfully, but you have to have the player base to sustain it, because if not, people are just gonna get frustrated and leave, and I think that's what happened here. In general though, if you can't tell, I have been having an absolute blast with this game over this last couple of days. Now, I have no idea how long this bump in the player base is going to last, but if you're someone who is interested in trying it once again, I highly recommend that you give it a go. If you haven't played in quite some time because of those long queue times, this is the perfect opportunity to get involved once again, even if it is just for a couple of days. The hope that I have, and I realize that this is a long shot and probably will never happen, is that with the success of Apex Legends, this has given Respawn the resources to make a Titanfall 3. Imagine if Titanfall 2 came out summer 2017 instead of going up against Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty in that holiday season, which is highly contested. I truly do believe that this game would have been way more successful. In that time where people are looking for more video games because there's usually a drought during that summer period, if all of a sudden this awesome multiplayer Titan-filled video game came out, I think it would have been a huge success. Now, obviously, we'll never know because we're not time travelers, but I think that was the biggest hindrance for why this game never took off, which is a shame because I truly do think it is fantastic. Yeah, guys, that is what it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed. I realize that many of you probably were not expecting a video on this topic, considering this game came out in 2016, but I've been having a lot of fun with it, and so I just kind of wanted to share with you guys. Let me know what you guys think about Titanfall 2, though. Do you think that it's a masterpiece? Do you think it's nowhere near as good as I'm making it out to be? Let me know your guys' thoughts down below. But yeah, guys, until next time, have a good one, and take it easy.